everyone, I'm Dawn. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for visiting with me today. So today I'm going to start a new thing on my channel where I talk about true crime. Now I'm not going to do this like every week. I'm going to try and make it a True Crime Tuesday. This isn't going to go up on a Tuesday, but every once in a while, not every Tuesday, I'm probably going to do like a true crime thing. Just cases I'm most like interested in. Now, we're going to start this with the Gainesville murders. That's what we're going to talk about today. Gainesville is where the University of Florida is located. It's the home of the Gators. It's a little college town. I think it's a cool little town. There's beautiful springs nearby. I know that a lot of our graduates in the Jacksonville area do end up at the University of Florida, and one of the victims is actually from Jacksonville. So let's just jump right in. I also want to say that there are fact sheets and things I found online that I'm going to provide links to down below. Just because if I was trying to get information from the fact sheets to put something thoughtful together, but this video is already going to be long as it is. That if I put all those facts in there, it would have been like a 9-hour documentary. Maybe not that long, but it would have been long. So in August 1990 in Gainesville, Florida, there were some horrific murders. Like every murder is horrific, but these were, if I can say it, especially brutal in that the victims were so incredibly young and mutilated. In August 1990, I believe it was August 26th, the parents of Sonia Larson and Christina Powell, I'm kind of peeking at notes, so they wrote me some big notes. Sonia Larson, 18 years old, Christina Powell, 17 years old. I think one or both of them were taking summer classes before the actual school year started, but this was pretty much the beginning of their college career. Very exciting time in a young adult's life, you know, just getting away from their family for the first time ever. And I believe it was a Sunday. I believe it was the day before the fall term actually started. I think that's when their bodies were found. The parents of one of the girls couldn't reach her for a couple days, I think it was. So they called the police to just kind of, hey, can you just kind of peek in on them? And a police officer, I don't know if it was two, but I know for sure one police officer at least, went by and knocked on the door, and he kind of forced his way in. He saw something that made him do that. I don't know if that because he noticed the door was jimmied or something, but he did go in and saw what he saw and immediately called for backup. Sonia Larson, again, 18 years old, she was found in the bedroom, stripped naked. I believe she was stabbed 20 times, and I don't think she was sexually assaulted, but she was murdered. And then the police found Christina Powell in the bathroom of the apartment. She was mutilated. Her nipples had been removed. She was pornographically positioned, and she was sexually assaulted before she was murdered. And he had cleaned her up, tried to clean her up. I've heard varying stories. I've heard that he tried to clean his victims up with bleach. He tried to just clean them with soap and water. So that still is unclear. I still haven't been able to find a definitive answer to that. Was it bleach or was it just soap and water? But either way, he cleaned her off. But he left a paper towel and her panties, and both of them had semen in them. And then about 9 hours later, I'm still peeking at my notes. I'm sorry, I'm cheating. 9 hours later, the police were called to check on Krista Hoyt. Her co-workers were concerned because she was late, and she was never late. And of course, they had, heightened concerns because of the 2 young ladies that were already found earlier that day. And so the police went to check on her, and I believe the police officer saw her through the window, that it just didn't look right. And so they go in the apartment, and she's positioned at the end of her bed. Her head has been removed and placed on like a bookcase in front of her to look like her head is looking at her detached body. I'd read that the killer actually moved a bookcase in front of the bed to face her. I don't know. This dude was messed up. And he did rape her also. And the police found semen on her too. And I believe she was killed with 1 stab wound. He just stabbed her once. I don't know why Sonia was stabbed 20 times. But who knows why any of these people do any of the things they do. Okay, so then the next morning, I forgot to tell you, Krista Hoyt is 18 years old. 18. And she was a student at Santa Fe Community College. Sonia Larson and Christina Powell are both students at the University of Florida, I believe. And the next morning, Manny Taboda and Tracy Paulus, both, I believe, students at Santa Fe Community College, both 23 years old. Their bodies were found in their apartment. I don't know if Tracy was sleeping or what. They weren't a romantic couple, so they weren't sleeping together. I'm not sure if Tracy was sleeping. She had to have been sleeping or been somewhere else, because the killer went into the apartment and stabbed Manny to death. I believe he stabbed him like over 20 times. The legs, the chest, the stomach, all over. There were defensive wounds on his arms because Manny was a big guy. He was a football player, and he fought back, but the killer just blitzed him, And Tracy was found immediately upon the police walking into the apartment, and she had been raped and murdered, and they weren't mutilated. The police suspect maybe he was interrupted or ran out of time or got nervous, whatever. Someone scared him off. And the only connection of the 5 victims were that they were college students, either at UF or Santa Fe Community College. None of them really had any classes together. I believe Krista Hoyt and Manny Taboda were said to have 1 class together, but they didn't know each other. They're all from different places. Christina Powell is the one that's from Jacksonville, the young lady from Jacksonville, the youngest victim. But as the story continues, you're going to find out that she wasn't his youngest victim of all of his victims. There are more than 18,000 pieces of evidence collected, like the semen. So they had DNA. And DNA was in its infancy, so they didn't really have like a database like they do now, because they would have known who it was. They caught him actually pretty quickly, but it was some work. At one point, there was a list of suspects, over 670 names on it. And they formed a task force to kind of, or a specialized team to go to each of the suspects and asking for a blood and hair sample so they can be eliminated, because they had the semen. They were going to be able to eliminate them as suspects. I don't know how they came up with this list, but I believe that they were all white men between 18 and 35, I believe, was the profiled information. And there was one person on the list that was a particular standout. He was 18-year-old Edward Humphrey. He had mental issues. He was a college student. He was recently evicted from Manny and Tracy's apartment complex, and he had a temper, and he was known for kind of bragging about, being violent or doing violent things, or, preparing to do violent things. And he was arrested on an unrelated charge. And so the public prematurely thought, oh, they got him, that's him. They saw him, they saw he had a cigar on his face, so obviously it was him. But, I remember seeing this, because this is on all of our minds. So we were watching, because Gainesville is relatively close to us, and just knowing that, and we were all, me and my friends, we were college age, and the female victims were all petite brunettes. So that was concerning to a couple of us. Because, like I said, Gainesville wasn't that far away. And so not that we were just thinking of ourselves, but his target is petite brunettes, it looks like. Manny was just a, what do you call it? A casualty, I guess. He was just in the way. But yes, Sonia, Krista, Christina, and Tracy were all petite brunettes, which was concerning to a lot of people, a lot of girls, and a lot of parents too. But I forgot to say that because it was the beginning of the school year was getting ready to start. These 5 victims found in a matter of days, hours even, within 48 hours, these 5 brutally murdered victims were found in their own apartment, in their safe place. Students, I think at both Santa Fe and University of Florida, were just we're out, and they fled, went back home. And I don't blame any of them for that, because if my kid was there, I'd be like, no, get in the car. No, our asses are going home, But anyway, about Edward Humphrey. Because he was arrested, they were able to get, a sample from him, and it didn't match. And they also searched his apartment. They said his apartment was really weird. One side was really neat and clean, and the other side was just a mess. But there was no evidence connecting him to any of the victims found there. But, I was going to say, I knew when I saw him. I'm like, he's not the one that did this. He didn't do this. And I remember my mom was like, yeah, I don't think he did it either. I'm like, I know he didn't. I knew. For some reason, I was just like, he did not do it. It wasn't him. He's probably done something, but he didn't do this. So now we're going to go back a year to Shreveport, Louisiana. There were 3 victims found in a Shreveport home by the names of the Grissom family. Julie Grissom, 24 years old. From what I can gather, she was a petite brunette. She was obviously the target. Her father was there, Tom Grissom, 55. He was stabbed to death. And also her nephew, Sean, 8 years old. He was stabbed to death also. Eight years old. That's what I meant by that he has a younger victim. And the police knew Julie was the target. She was found naked. The killer had tried to clean her up with vinegar or some type of solvent. And the scene was staged extremely similar to that of the female Gainesville victims. And the Shreveport police were pretty confident they were looking for a drifter named Danny Rawling, who was actually a known bank robber. And so Gainesville police were like, I wonder if that's our guy. And so they went and checked to see if there were any bank robberies around the time of the murders. And there was a First Union was robbed, and the police got there and chased the guy into the woods. They didn't catch him. He got away. But they did find a campsite there, and I don't know if they started searching the campsite then, but we'll get to the campsite in a second. I don't want to give you too much unnecessary information because this is already going to run long. A week after the bank robbery, about 40 miles away, a grocery store was robbed, and the guy was caught and he was in custody. And that was Danny Rollin. And at the campsite they found tons of evidence. They found pants with blood on it that matched Manny Taboada. They found like a ski cap with fibers that matched fibers found, I believe, at Krista Hoyt's crime scene. Or Krista Hoyt's, where she was murdered. They also found some of Krista Hoyt's hair. And they also found a screwdriver, and I did not know this about screwdrivers. Every screwdriver has a unique signature. At least at the time of these crimes they did. And so they had a specialist that could match the screwdriver to all three scenes, all three apartments. The screwdriver was used to jimmy the door open, and they were able to match that screwdriver. So they were like, we got him, that's our guy. And they really wanted a confession. But I remember the son of a bitch walking through, like, for his arraignment. They showed him on the news, and he was just trying to look all meek and like, I couldn't hurt a fly. So he was either trying to be like he was innocent, or that he was setting it up for an insanity plea. And we then thought, well, yeah, he's setting it up for an insanity plea because he did give a confession, but it was all about how he let the devil in, he let the evil in, and the evil took over, and he tried to suppress it, but he couldn't. And but it wasn't good enough. But they really wanted that confession because DNA, again, was in its infancy, and they did not know that the jury would be convinced by the DNA evidence. Although I think all the other evidence they had was totally damning, but they wanted that confession. Now, he went to Florida State Penitentiary for robbing the grocery store, the early murder. And he had bragged on his block about murdering these people and raping these girls, and just, because like they'll go in there and they'll brag and stuff and try and, they think they're big shit, right? Well, it was revealed to the police by someone that he may have written down some of this information and hid it somewhere in his cell. So they asked the Florida State Penitentiary if they can kind of do like a shakedown of his block, and maybe they could find it. I never could. I know that they found some things he had written, but it wasn't exactly a confession. And finally, he just, I got notes. Oh, yeah, finally they started to try to appeal to ego. Like, oh, man, you're such a scary, tough guy. How'd you pull it off? He wanted to confess at this point. He wanted to share his story with the world, but he would only speak through his new prison bestie. I always forget his name. Bobby Lewis. Apparently, he is kind of a big-time criminal that was on death row, but I've never heard of him. But he confesses in the presence of Bobby Lewis, and they have him. Now, and 2 weeks prior to the Gainesville murders in Sarasota, Florida, he broke into a woman's home, held her captive for, I don't know if it was 24 hours, but it was for a long time, several hours, and, you know, raped her nonstop. And I don't want to reveal her name. You can find it. It's online, but because she's still alive and everything, I don't want to, it's just not comfortable for me. But, I mean, you could find her name easily. But he would never be punished for that crime against her, but she would be there. What was the date? On October 25th, 2006 is the day he was executed. Now, I am not a huge supporter of the death penalty, but I also believe some people need killing. I mean, that sounds rough. That sounds like a rough way to put it, but I truly believe that. He was a monster, you know, what he did to the family a year before, he's destroyed many families because, you know, the Grissom family, the Powell family, the Larson family, the Tabotas, the Pauluses, the Hoyts, these people are destroyed forever. And they have to have it in their head what he did to these victims. And it's disgusting, and we only just got just a little bit of the information. He is just a terrible, horrible human being. I believe it was shortly after he murdered the Grissoms. He actually shot his father in the head and in the stomach. His father lived, but apparently his father was extremely abusive. He killed Danny's dog when he was like 6 years old. And this was information given to people by Danny and neighbors that lived nearby. He hated Danny from the time he was born. He started abusing him when he started crawling, when he was about a year old. Which, I mean, don't they start crawling a little sooner than that? Maybe he was a little delayed. Now, I'm not saying the abuse is an excuse for what he did, but it is a pattern. I mean, I think a lot of us have been abused and just moved on to, you know, we just, in a way, I think maybe we got a little lucky, or maybe we just got the therapy or the help we needed, or, but it didn't really seem like Danny ever had anybody, and that can take a toll on you, but not making excuses for him. I think that, the abuse exacerbated the situation, but this was already in him to do this. That's what I think. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's what I think. But yeah, this is a terrible, brutal thing. It was awful. It took 3 years for them to finally go to trial, even though they got him. I want to say around 2 weeks after the bodies were discovered, they caught him. Oh, but there is a whole laundry list of his crimes. Just, it's terrible. It's ugly. It's disgusting. It's horrible. And he was disgusting. I hated him. You know, he didn't kill any of my family, but I hated him. When I saw him, I just want to smack him. I just want to smack him. I hate him so much for this. And there's still, to this day, memorials up for the Gainesville 5. And if I can find some images, I'll share them here. I actually think that I have some that I took one of the times I was in Gainesville. I spent a lot of time in Gainesville because the VA hospital that my dad was receiving cancer treatment was there. And we've also gone to the springs there and stuff. So it's a cute little town. It's terrible what happened to it. I still think it still got kind of that attached to it. Oh, the Gainesville murders, but you know. Anyway, it was awful. I feel for the families. Oh, and I wanted to say about Edward Humphrey, the suspect, the The 18-year-old they thought may have done that, the one that made everybody feel like they caught the killer, but he wasn't the killer. He did some time. He made some bad choices, and he battled with mental illness, but he bounced back, ended up graduating college, and just made a really nice life for himself. So at least there's something. So anyway, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I will talk to everyone later. I'll provide links below, because I just scratched the tip. I didn't give you much at all. There's so much information. It's such a scattered mess. But if you're interested in true crime, I definitely recommend reading into it. Like, it's not like a morbid fascination with true crime. What it is, it's about self-preservation. We have to never forget what kind of monsters are out there, because we need to look out for ourselves and our loved ones. And I know some people say, well, looking into all this research and all this will numb you. It doesn't. It keeps me sharp. Am I a little paranoid? Yeah, I'm a little paranoid, but I think it's a healthy level of paranoia. I mean, I'm not so paranoid that I'm locking myself in my house. Well, I'm locking myself in my house now because we're in quarantine, and right now it's raining. I don't know if you can hear that, but I just think a little bit of healthy paranoia will serve well to protect you. So protect yourselves, take care of each other, and I will talk to all of you later. Thanks for joining me. Bye.